Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists. We are your hosts, Adriana May and
Jackie Sanders. We're two emerging artists sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you're not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we launch a new episode every Tuesday. So today's episode, it is the end of 2021. By the time this airs, it'll be the last week of the year, which is so insane. We've already had episodes in the past of looking back on the year, setting goals for 2020 or 2022.
Yep.
It's still gonna take me months to get used to saying that. But really wanting to take the time to think about, I know a lot of the conversations you and I have been having, Adriana, is like, how this year feels so different compared to, let's say, 5 years ago, before we were even diving into our art business, of your mindset around the end of the year changes when you become a business owner.
Yeah, it's very different. But before we go into that, I also want to say, oh my goodness, we almost made it to 40 episodes on the first year of our podcast.
We didn't start till like May. So
I know, May the 4th, Star Wars Day. Yes.
It wasn't planned. It was just a good coincidence for you, Star Wars.
Or was it? No. I mean, I was doing the editing.
That's
and I'm
true.
a Star
You're
Wars
like,
fan.
Coincidence?
Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, okay, no,
that's
I
why you
planned
suggested
exactly
Tuesdays. It's all coming together.
Well.
Evil plan.
No, but seriously, it's been such a cool journey so far. Obviously, like all the different topics we've discussed with you guys, plus it's the fact that we're both really, really, really passionate, not just about the art practice, but also about the business side of our, creative business. And we love sharing with you basically the behind the scenes and the things we've learned along the journey. So, thank you. Thank you for, riding this train with us. It's amazing, and it's going to keep going.
Yeah, we're so excited. And that was one thing, I mean, a little zoom out in terms of the podcast. I know our avid listeners have probably heard this before, but in case this is one of your first episodes listening, of when we committed to doing this project, I think both of us agreed, like I went into it, if we're not going to do at least 100 episodes, it's not worth it. Like we are both definitely not the type of people to, we'll do 10 episodes and then see how it goes. I'm like, no,
go big, go home.
We're committing to at least 100. Then if we truly want to reevaluate, we can. However, as we've discussed, especially because we cover the business side of building an art career, it really is ever evolving. So content wise, there's really never going to be a lack of topics for us to cover. Worst case scenario, we start reevaluating old subjects that we've already covered, because 6 months from now, marketing strategy may be very different. There may be a new dancing app called TikTok that just emerges, and then all of a sudden everyone's marketing strategy changes. So thank you to everyone who's listening, and those especially that listen week after week. We love getting DMs from you guys, hearing your feedback on episodes,
your questions,
and just talking about your business. And questions that you may have. That really does inspire us with upcoming topics for the podcast, because if you have certain question about the art industry or your art business specifically, then I guarantee you other creatives are having that too. So we're glad that you can kind of like be a fly on the wall for these conversations that we have all the time already, that we can share whatever knowledge and experience we have with other creatives out there to save them time.
Yeah. And you can look back through the catalog of recorded episodes. We definitely have somewhere. It is definitely fly in the wall. We did like behind the scenes type thing of like, this is how we actually talk normally, and all the different things and tangents we go into as we try to brainstorm and figure out kind of like what the next steps are for certain parts of our business, which actually perfect segue. One of the things that, we wanted to brainstorm, on what to do differently from, again, in the past before we were business owners and we were just doing art, is essentially how to wrap up the year What do you do that signifies in your brain? Because you could argue and say, well, it's just one more day, you know, from
Right.
20. Well, it is. Yeah, we get that. But
Technically.
it's also, I feel like psychologically, in a way, important to be able to say, this chapter closes and we move on to the next one and kind of
Right.
fresh start to a certain extent. I don't know, there's something special about that year end, new year kind of time of the year to just kind of refresh. So let me ask
Yeah.
you, Jackie, I'll put you on the spot first.
Oh
What do
man.
you do? Or what are some things you think about um, on how to wrap up the year as a business owner?
Yeah. So this has definitely been something I've been thinking about a lot because similar to like what you said, it technically is just another day,
Yeah.
another week of an ever evolving to-do list. But I think inherently with Thanksgiving and Christmas and going into the new year, like because there's so many celebrations and family time, it inherently makes you slow down a little bit and be reflective and reminisce. So one thing that I really enjoy doing is kind of giving myself that grace to zoom out and take a step back out of my business. I might not be starting any brand new big ambitious projects in December, but really taking that time to zoom out, say, okay, what are my priorities? Like we talked about in previous episodes, evaluating what are my goals for next year, but especially when it comes to the never ending to do list. This is definitely a battle that I know I face and so
Oh,
many
we all
other
do.
type A creatives and just creatives in general, the never ending notebooks and Google Drive documents and calendars. And so, one thing that I have been doing in the past week or two is really doing a brain download. And this is one thing we've talked about in previous episodes where you basically put everything you can think of, big, small, personal life, art business wise, art making process, write all of it down as your to do list, but then plan time to do it. So even if, let's say, um, updating my inventory tracker for this new series that I just finished. So that includes photographing the work, documenting it, listing it on my website, XYZ checklist things. Okay, I might not be taking on that project, but which day coming up am I going to do it? Okay, the second Saturday in January, that'll get done. Great. And so that way it's not, it takes the overwhelm off of I have to do all these things right now, but I know it will get done. I've scheduled a time for it in the future. And that way you can go into the new year knowing, even if there are things on your to do list that you wish had already been completed, don't let the guilt get to you. Don't say, I wish I was at a different point in my business than I already am, and getting down on yourself for it. Embrace where you are is kind of the mindset I've been having, and then plan accordingly for the future so that you know it will get done at this point. So that's been a super helpful practice this year because starting to do any big project right now, frankly, is just inefficient use of my time. My brain capacity is not going to be there. It's going to take me 5 times as long because I won't be able to focus with a million things going on. So having those plan days, I'm hoping will be very helpful.
Yeah.
How about you?
Very similar actually. So also taking that macro view, that bird's eye view of the business, looking at the different trackers and different ways in which I track my growth as a business and seeing what worked, what could have gone better, but without the guilt, just, what was behind it, how could it be
Yeah.
improved, but also very, very importantly, cutting back. Honestly, this is hard to
Yeah.
do, but basically saying, did that work? Whether it did or not, do I want to do that again?
Right.
And
Being
evaluating which parts of
critical.
my business I want to focus on, which ones go in the back burner, and actually which ones go in the maybe someday list,
Right.
to reduce the overwhelm of the never ending to do list. Because there are things that honestly, they sound fun, they sound great. I want to do them, or they're necessary evils. But some of them just they can be put off. So Similarly, I've been also reevaluating my systems of organization, which we have episodes on that, of course, and trying to determine, okay, going forward, from what I've learned in the last couple of years, what are some systems that I can improve to make it a little bit easier for me to manage when I have
Yeah.
50 competing things going on at once, everything vying for my attention. So part of that basically involves trying to break the big goals into smaller manageable ones by not just
Yeah.
giving myself due dates for the big goal itself, but also to work on them. So, like, say, for example, some of the things that, I've been working throughout this year and I'm going to continue is on sharpening my skills, right? Well, then I might say I'm going to dedicate 2 hours to reading books about story-based selling every Tuesday at 2 p.m. I don't know, I'm making it up, right?
Right.
But like, it doesn't mean I have to read a whole book during that time, but it means that every week at a set time, I'm setting the time aside to do X and
Yeah.
basically work towards that goal with, you know, having the flexibility to know that goalpost could move, but if I know I'm working on it consistently, I'm way more likely to do it and actually finish it
Yeah.
rather than, oh, I still have 6 months. Oh, I still have 2 months. Oh, I still have 1 month. Oh, I only have 1 week. How am I going to accomplish this big goal in 1 week? Like, I
Right.
can't. And
To
if I
really
try to
reverse
push through
engineering
it,
it.
yeah, and if I try to push through it, I'm gonna end up getting burnt out because I could have just spread this out. So doing better basically about pacing myself and like splitting things
Yeah.
up and not everything is fire house on fire. I have to do it right now. And then if I'm moving it farther out, then it's easy to procrastinate because you don't see it like it's either you do it right now or you procrastinate it sometimes. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, I need to do I want to
Middle.
do better about yeah, like parceling it out. So whether it's actually things like goals, things like in my art practice itself where I'm like scaling up to go much bigger, projects that involve other artists in the community and amplifying their voices, or even things like
Yeah.
asking for help. I did that for the first time this year and worked with other artists and said, can you help me with this? No matter how I slice and dice the time, I just don't have it. I
Right.
need someone to come in here and help me do X, which in this case had to do with inventory. And that was amazing, right? So in my
Right.
mind, I'm like, okay, I need to parcel out these things and
And I
again
think
figure
that's
out
a
what I'm getting rid of and then yeah, have more time to paint, honestly.
Yeah, and that's one thing I know we've talked about in previous episodes, like the Eisenhower matrix, in terms of like what's urgent, what needs to be done, and is therefore scheduled into your day. But then also, what are those things that can be delegated out realistically, especially as you become, I think that's a huge shift of from business owner to an employee mindset shift of, okay, like now as a business owner, even if we are solo entrepreneurs currently, obviously we have our partnership, which is amazing and helping us split up the tasks. But there is a point as you grow as a business of, okay, what realistically can be delegated out and is worth paying another entrepreneur, another creative to help you with so that you can dedicate more time to painting. I know that's one big goal that's focused on both of our to-do lists going into the new year, which is super, super exciting. But I think especially like you were saying, zooming out going into the new year is super helpful. And it's kind of that perfect time to do it in relation to our goal setting episode as well. Of, okay, let's say, I know a common one is, okay, I want to start doing art products or art prints. Okay, rather than having that as your goal for February, maybe that's your goal for April. And that starts by getting pieces photographed, researching suppliers, ordering samples. Like, what are those like lesser chunk goals that you can set every 2 weeks that then, okay, then you hit your big goal. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Another wrap up item, I have to say, not a fun one. I'm just going to preface it by saying
Uh-oh.
that is
What?
basically evaluating the financials and being
Oh,
able to
yeah.
say, okay, my income and expenses? Am I tracking this properly? Um, I'll be
That's a big
honest with you,
one.
I don't want to deal with that when taxes are about to come due.
Yep.
So for me, I
So
feel like having a little bit of the extra time during the holidays, especially after you've done holiday markets and things like that. So you're already doing a breather. Some of this can be like it'll pass you in a flash, right? And trying to keep track of your record keeping, your bookkeeping while
yeah.
you're in the middle of the busy season might not be exactly realistic for a lot of people. So I feel like after that craziness is done, it's time to sit down, look at the books, so to speak, the ways that you track this information so that you can wrap up the year knowing that all those lovely businessy tasks of like, okay, you got to
Yes.
send sales taxes and things like that, like basically all your ducks are in a row.
You have those systems in place so that you know, okay, going into the new year, you just have to follow the system. It's not guessing as you go. So you have the
Mhm.
finances set up, you have your art inventory set up. And this is so much that we talk about on the podcast, but especially in our level of artist membership, is really like, hey, what are those systems as a business owner that you need to make your future self so much happier and thankful that like, okay, taxes come around here. I've already set everything up every quarter. It's super easy. Tax season isn't stressful trying to find receipts from 11 months
In a
ago.
shoebox somewhere.
Uh,
Yeah, don't.
hopefully all in one place. I
Hopefully all
mean,
digital.
we'll have to go into future episodes about that
Yeah.
as well.
But
Add
and
that
that
to the
also might
list.
become a conversation of when you go into it of like, "Ugh, I'd rather pay a bookkeeper, right?" So that's another thing to consider as you wrap up the year of like, okay, what things will kind of help? What kind of things can I delegate that I haven't yet? That now looking back, I'm going, I'd rather not do that again. I'd rather have somebody else do it. There
Yeah,
has to
I think
be a
that's
better
good.
way, either a system that I'm doing or actually giving it to somebody else to do it. So that's another one wrap up item. And then another one that came to mind, extremely important as well. Oh my goodness. When it
Uh-oh.
comes to the wrap up part of it, is also determining. So that's more on the business side. I'm going to say on the art practice side of things. To me, it's also going to turn into, especially for those of you that might be toggling a lot of different styles, subjects, medium, etc. I feel like it's also a good time at the end of the year to say, okay, out of all these different things that I'm doing, out of all these different audiences that I'm potentially talking to, what am I going to focus on? Like, what is my number one priority? Maybe you're a pet portrait artist and you do landscapes and you do, I don't know, commissions of people, whatever. Are you going to narrow down and, batter down the
Yeah.
hatches and say, actually, 2022 or whatever, your new year, I'm going to specialize in X. I want to be known for X. The rest is supplementary, but if I only can pick one
Right.
style, one or narrow it down, right? Just a couple styles. Like, what am I going to focus on? What do I want to be known for? What do I want that year to be all about? So
Yeah.
I think like this is the perfect time as a wrap up, not just the business side, but the art practice side of what do you
Take it.
actually want to do? You got to set some intentions here. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like when it boils down to everything in terms of, okay, what are your goals? What are your priorities going into the new year? And then also making sure that they're ones that you can evaluate at the end of it. Once it
Mhm.
comes up to end of March, end of halfway through the year, how are you going to assess whether you are successful at that goal or not? Like you were saying with reverse engineering your goals, what are those small milestones that lead to the bigger milestone? So it's not just like, these are my 3 goals, I hit them or not. It's okay, well, this one I got 60% there, this one I hit. So what are those sub goals? And I think that's a great point, Adrienne, in terms of what's your biggest ultimate priority and setting that up right from the beginning of the year, because then when the to-do list is ever growing, when you feel like you're just getting overwhelmed, you can go back to, okay, these are my top 3 priorities in this order. Therefore, this is the most valuable use of my time moving forward.
Yeah.
Because as we go into the new year, this is that perfect time to just slow down, look at your business, reflect on the good things, be critical of the bad things, and how to then move forward with that new frame of mind entering into the new year, which is so much fun.
Yeah, and speaking of wins, we've mentioned it before, worth mentioning again. Definitely one of the biggest ones for us was being able to launch this podcast so we can share these kind of ideas with you, right? And actionable steps to grow your business. So we definitely look forward to many more years together and celebrating this creative journey for many more years to come.
Yes, so thank you everyone for listening every week. We hope that this holiday season you were able to really put those airplane rides and car rides to use listening to our podcast and past episodes that maybe you missed along the way or found worth re-listening to. We appreciate you letting us share a part of your holiday.
Yep, but that's all for today on today's conversation. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you want to stay connected with us and share what you have learned, you can follow us on social media, Arts across all platforms.
And I'm at J Stanford Studio on all platforms. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week in the year 2022.
I know, right? All right, bye everybody.